Nacho Average TableTalk. Woohoo!
Welcome to Nacho Average TableTalk. I'm Zach,
And I'm Pepper.
and this is a thing where we talk about something in the board game sphere, ramble on about it, and
never come to a conclusion.
or maybe we do.
Maybe
We're gonna
we
need
do.
your help.
Yeah,
We maybe did on our last one.
kind of, maybe. Or maybe our next one. We don't know how these are going to be released. We think
don't
that
know.
one's first.
But yeah, so this one, as you could probably see in the title, is talking about inserts in games and how the storage in the game box, what the best way to store things is, and use
Yes.
baggies, use bins. What do you do?
Yeah.
What's the
We're
best
going to
way
cover
do?
everything. We're going to cover all our pet peeves and horrible examples of inserts that
Yes.
work and help you store the game.
Yes, let us know in the comments below what game you have that has the best insert you have, and also the one with the worst insert. Or maybe you don't have inserts in your games. Maybe you are one of those people that take them out immediately and either throw everything in loose or bag it or bin it, whatever you do. Let us know in the comments below.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll get right into it. Inserts.
Inserts.
I think we can just talk about those right off the bat.
So, yeah.
I think when we first started, that was something. I think when you first get into the hobby, you kind of like, oh, it's cool that they
Cool.
have these inserts. Like, oh yeah, that's good place to put these.
By the time you get your 10th game, you're like, that's trash.
Exactly. Because yeah, at first you're like, I'm not gonna bag all my stuff. I'd like it all in. I'd like to have it in this, inserts.
The
and
coins will stay in that
yeah,
little area.
right. Put some of the resources there and do a little bit of that, and then occasionally bag something. Not really. It's not the first choice.
Yeah.
It seems like, at least when we started, that's how I kind of felt. And then I feel like there's been a bit of a shift, but that's maybe been based on kind of some of the more. I mean, we've gotten more and more games. Luckily, we've been blessed enough to have quite a few games, so I feel like we've seen it all. Maybe not seen it all, but a lot of options of things you can do, or that they do when they're putting that together. And yeah, right off the bat, just base inserts. I think there are ones that are done right, and I think there are ones that are done wrong.
So yeah, there's a few different options. There's the classic kind of black plastic tray. Sometimes they just have cardboard separators that like intersect. Usually, I'm like, no, just get that out of there. Like, some of them are like, oh, it creates like a 4x4. I think Valeria, Shadow Kingdoms of Valeria, has like 4 or 5x5 little section that you assemble of things, and I'm like, well, one, you only need like 3 of these sections for the components in the game, because it's way oversized box, which we might talk about as well, size of box. But I don't know, I just feel like those aren't really as custom to what you need, just being those square sections. Although one that I think is probably one of the most amazing inserts that works perfect is Bunny Kingdom. And that is just kind of a couple separators of cardboard that's in the base game. And I mean, for what that game has, just the cards fit perfectly into those squares, and then the castles as well kind of fit perfectly into those sections.
That's true.
We do bag the bunnies because they're pretty small, but
And
I feel
the little
the
small
tokens.
cardboard tokens.
Yep.
Not
But I
for
feel
luxury.
like that's probably the best example of, and that's
Of
just
more of a
what,
cardboard one, because I would
Yeah.
say, you've got the black plastic, otherwise you got cardboard.
Cardboard. Yep.
Yeah.
And cardboard. Most of the cardboard ones are just like little bits on the edge that pretty much bring in the box like an inch maybe or a few inches.
Try to fill in space.
Either brings in like an inch and it's like, why is this even here? Or brings in like half the box width and it's like, why is the box not just this thin?
Right. So yeah, I that's definitely what you see, I think, with the cardboard ones. And I would say most of those, in my opinion, are not usually the greatest. Depending on if it's very minimal components,
Yeah.
that's fine. But most of the time, if that's the case, it's almost the same outcome as if they didn't have it in there at all.
Yeah.
I mean, it would just be a bigger space for it to be kind of loose in. Then.
Yeah, I think so. I agree with that.
Um,
Although, sometimes they have nice artwork on it, then, if it is that cardboard one. And I'm like, it's not, it doesn't help that much, could just get extra space, but it's got like nice, maybe Carcassonne, like the landscape I think that had, and it's like, it's nice to just leave it in there. So
Yeah, that's
usually
fair.
not great.
Yeah, I would say most of those have to go with a combo of using baggies
Yeah.
or some bins or some sort of other storage
Yeah.
type. If it's got a bunch of different components,
Yeah.
I would say that's probably needed in those ones.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then going to more of the kind of black plastic, you've got various levels of those as
Yes.
well. I feel like some of them, it's like, well, we needed an insert. And it's about as basic as it can be. It's kind of like, oh, we got some areas here. Sometimes, hopefully, one of my biggest things is I love spaces for cards. If you're going to have that plastic insert, I want spaces that cards go in and fit in. And I'm not even a person that sleeves cards. And I would say that could be another conversation, but I don't know that either of us are into sleeving, so we don't really have someone to argue that. And I know there are people that really like sleeving, and that's totally fine.
Argue down below.
But when I'm not even sleeving my cards and they don't fit, that's not my favorite thing.
Yeah.
Especially if it's an insert that isn't amazing to begin with.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, okay, you could have put just a little more effort into that. I'm not asking for the insert to be perfect, but the rest of the insert's already not amazing.
Yeah.
Just at least make sure my cards fit.
Extra room is always good. And sometimes, I guess, maybe it just has so many cards that it's just not going to work.
Thick,
But yeah, it's just the worst when it's just like barely over the top and they're sliding out. And I think the same thing for tiles as well in some games where, especially when there's different types of tiles, like a tile placement game, and it's like, oh, here's these era 1, 2, and 3 tiles, and there's not even amounts with all of those, but the slots to place the tiles in are all even amounts, so you're going to have to put some of the 3s with the 2s and some of the 2s with the 1s. I'm like, I wish you'd just put a little more effort in and got like a custom, like, okay, this section will fit all the era 1s and the era 2s and the era 3s, instead of having to kind of mismatch all of them. And I think that can happen with cards as well, when it's just maybe not enough space. So yeah, I just would like a little more customization to what's actually going to be in the box, and maybe looking forward to expansions as well.
Right. Yeah, I would agree. So yeah, unless it fits a couple things perfect. If it doesn't even, a couple of things that look like they're more customized towards a certain component, and that doesn't work, I usually just scrap that. Because if it's a basic one that just kind of maybe has some areas, some bigger areas to kind of just store stuff in. You don't really even know what goes there. It's just kind of like up to your choice.
Yeah.
And then maybe you do have 2 areas where it's like, okay, well that definitely has to be for those components. You know that if it doesn't even work for those components, and it's like, well, now this is really worthless because it's not doing anything. Toss it out.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree. That makes me kind of think of the Ethnos one, what you said, when they don't really fit. That's a different type of not fitting, I think.
Yeah.
Because that one gets closer to maybe my other thought of there's kind of that, like I said, insert where it's not much, or it's not much effort, it seems like, went into it.
Yeah.
Then there is the insert that is, I want it exactly perfect. Every piece has a spot. Every spot has a piece.
7 in the morning, just obsessing, trying to make this the most awesome, epic, perfect insert ever.
Yes.
They went too far.
And then it gets to the point where, wow, this is almost a pain to put away. And I've got a couple of those. I think so. Some of them that I thought of were Coimbra and Wayfarers of the South Tigris. Those both kind of have that. And then it's like, especially like the Wayfarers one. I haven't played Coimbra in a little bit, but I don't remember. It might have had the same thing where it's even if you do put them in there, it's with my fingers, maybe they're too chubby, too big. It's hard to get the pieces back out even. So it's like, it's just kind of a pain. I'd rather just, sometimes I'm like,
it's just like,
I just want to take the insert out and throw it.
Like tiles, like 10 tiles like that, and it's like you gotta slot them all into the place in this orientation. And it's like, just bag it.
Right. And then, that makes me think of...
Especially if they are going to come loose, possibly, which I don't know if that one does.
Yeah, so I think both of those do, at the same time, can come loose if you're storing the boxes vertically.
Yeah.
So and that's another problem. You can check out our other video where we talk about how we store our shelves, how we store the boxes in our shelves, and all that stuff. And you can go to that one, comment on what you do. But yeah, I think of Ethnos then too, because it's like that one seems so close to being a perfect one, and some of the things stay in there really nicely, and then some of the other pieces just don't. And it's like it's just barely off. It's so close to being like almost a perfect insert, but just because it played it so close, and that one is not one that feels to me like it doesn't feel as close as these ones. Like these ones are like it's almost more painstaking. This one it is done in a way that it doesn't feel like oh I've got to be really meticulous on how I'm putting these back. This one it's all pretty easy to put back, but it's just slightly off. I think that, and then if you kind of are moving it around or storing it vertically, it can just throw all the stuff out, and it's just like it's just so close to being a really good insert, and that's when we still store like that. It's not as bad I think as some of the other ones, but still just kind of sucks when they're like right on the edge of being there. Yeah, and I think you had brought up kind of another one, Merchants of the Dark Road, where it's and it brings us to kind of another thing to discuss, but it's got the kind of putting things in there in a very specific way.
Yes, it's like okay, here's at the like in like some very deep crevice, it's like you see like kind of an outline of where something should be, that kind of thing, where it's like okay, I had to put that there, and then these 5 dice, like 4 there, and then the 1 there, and then it like expands to do these different types of dice and start stacking them, and I'm like, just give it like a little leeway, make it a little looser so you can just throw all the dice in there. They don't have to be like, okay, they'll only fit it if they're all straight and in order in this way.
Right.
Just be like, it fits it. It's got a little extra room so they can be crooked, falling into each other, that type of thing. It doesn't have to be perfect. But yeah, that has a lot of just like little individual like first player markers types of things, which usually I think we just kind of group those together if they're just odd single components.
Right.
But then we're like, okay, let's make a spot for each one, and it's a bit of a pain.
It is. And then they have another insert in there that is like perfect.
Yeah.
That's the worst part, is they did like an amazing job of making a perfect insert. And then they have this other one that isn't. I'm like, he did such a perfect job with one, and the other one is, I see what you're trying to do. You were trying to make it perfect, but it just didn't work.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm sure someone put a lot of work into that and stuff, but then it makes me wonder, like, did they actually have people, like, a bunch of people, that they kind of show, because it even has instructions, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Did they actually have, like, people that had no idea, weren't involved in the project? Did they have them try to do it and see how long it took them? See if they were confused?
Yeah, I feel like, I mean, obviously, I have no clue what the process was, but I feel like if you're creating it, that when you're testing it, you're not really going to be having that experience of an actual person trying to figure it out. You already know everything, and you're going to be like, does this work? It's like, oh, it does all fit in there. This is great. This is perfect. You're not really going through that experience that you would be if you don't really know this game. So I feel like that could be possibly what it is. Not saying that's probably what I'd come up with. I'd be like, I'm going to make this the most perfect. That'd probably be my attitude, which is why I shouldn't do it. But yeah, I do wonder how much they do put into that.
Yeah, I'm not sure. But yeah, and that one of the things that makes, well, it's done on I think both of them, and one of the things that makes the one perfect is it's got a top on it.
Yeah.
So it is a normal kind of plastic insert, but then it's got a top that pops on, keeps everything in place exactly right. So I love when inserts do that. If there's something where things could be loose in the box, I love when there's a plastic topper.
Yes.
But even that can go wrong.
Yeah, some of them snap on and some of them don't. And some of the ones that don't stay on.
That's true.
Sometimes they do, surprisingly. And I'm like, oh, this isn't going to stay on. And then it does. But yeah, it baffles me sometimes. I'm like, because Red Rising Collector's Edition has that lid. and it goes on there, and you would think, okay, we can store it vertically now, but I think there's still enough space left in the box that it does come loose. It does pop off, and I don't know, maybe if
Pops off. The cubes are all over the place.
Yeah, I think they make room for this. They have like an arch of slots, holes for the player cubes, which is awesome. But then I think they make room for the score pad, which then cuts into each of those little pods for those player cubes, making them not flush all the way with the top of the insert, meaning that all the cubes come flying out and mixing and mingling with all the cards, getting underneath the cards somehow, and getting with the dang card trays. It's just a complete mess.
Yeah, I don't get it.
It just makes me laugh whenever I see it, and none of the cubes are in their spaces.
They'll be switched with other ones. I don't know how it happens. It's crazy because you'd swear from the looks of it, we like took the box and went like this, and we're not doing that. I don't know how. It's really strange. I don't know how that happens, but yeah. So even that can be. I mean, it's a tough thing. So yeah, the inserts. And I've never been involved in making an insert. I don't know how hard it is. It probably is tough. So, got to give them some leeway on it. And I'm sure the more detailed you get, it probably adds cost, and then it's got to be passed on and stuff. So, it's a tough thing. But yeah, so then you get into the, I guess, thoughts of baggies, bins.
I think baggies are always good. Yes. I mean, there's no time where you're like, oh, could I use a bag? That it's going to be like, no, you can't use a bag here. I think it's always going to work. Even for cards to go into their card slots, usually, unless it's a stiffer bag. You got to find the right bag. Usually, even then, you can put the cards in a bag and then put them into the card slot. So you can still even use that insert, just trying to prevent things from still moving around. So I think bags are always good. The bins as well. I mean, it kind of depends on how much space you have in your box. And bins can be, there's a few different types, but they can be large and pretty bulky for some boxes, but it also makes it very neat and organized because it is just rectangles that you're working with and not odd, baggy shapes or anything like that.
Yeah, and then you can obviously pull those right out and be able to use them because usually they're probably holding some component that will likely be used in the game. So then you can kind of already have them in trays, kind of to say, which is really nice. So I think, perfect world where bins were flexible enough to fit any box, fit well, and fill in space perfect. I think that would be my preferred, but the end of the day, baggies are king, I think, because you can use them in any sort of storage. If your insert is not great, you just take it out, store everything in baggies, and you're probably fine. We actually have a huge box full of baggies. I feel kind of bad because I'm like, even in the game, there's pretty much every game nowadays sends 5-6 baggies and stuff, if not more, depending on what components they have. So then they just kind of pile up because I feel like you end up, at least the way I see it, I usually will bag it up initially if I don't play it right away, just kind of based on sorting things the best I can, and then just throw any of the extra bags, if there are any that were sent, into the bag. And then play it once to see kind of how things actually are sorted. And then that kind of determines, okay, I think we need this many baggies for it.
Yeah, I think so. I think bags are just, because bins as well, if there's just not really that many of a type of something, then it's like, okay, even if there's like 4 resources, one of them's gold, it's more rare, there's less of them, it's like, do you dedicate a whole kind of big bin to that one, or do you mix that with another one in their bin, or do you just have the gold bagged and then the other one's all with the bins? So I feel like not everything earns a bin, and that can make it kind of hard to choose what to do. Where bags are good for everyone.
That's fair.
And one thing that I just absolutely love is making player Baggies,
Yes.
with including their starting resources, everything like that. It's just very satisfying to me. You could do that with bins, but I think it just works so much better with baggies.
It does. It definitely does. I would say probably the game in our collection that I like the bins most is It's a Wonderful World. Because the
Yep.
box is already from the base. I honestly don't remember. I assume it had maybe a cardboard insert in it.
Yeah.
I don't remember. It no longer has an insert in it.
Doesn't have any insert.
Right
Yeah,
now,
I think
it does
I think
not.
it had just like a
I think
cardboard
it
with
did
a
have
separator.
something. Yeah, I think it had something. But it does not have it in there anymore. And so I got the cards are in a huge bag because those cards are pretty
Yep.
big. And then all the cubes are in bins.
Yeah,
And
the circular
then
bins.
in circular bins, which go right out onto the main board.
They
And it
just-
gets the perfect use for
they
them.
fit
There's
perfectly.
tons of space in the box.
Yeah.
So they all fits really, really well. So that's probably, in our collection, the one that
I think that
I
is
think
probably,
uses them best.
Yeah, one of the best use of the bins.
But yeah, otherwise, bags definitely. We don't come to conclusions here, but I would say that I'm probably at the point where, as nice as some inserts are, and it feels kind of bad to get rid of them, I think baggies are better, in my opinion.
Yeah,
Baggy
I mean,
everything that you can.
yeah, bagging is kind of it's universal.
Mhm.
It almost always works, I think. Although then there's times where then you do how many tiles is enough to where you just leave them in the box and don't put them in a bag. Sometimes it's like a weird amount where it's like, okay, we could bag these.
That's true.
That would be a lot. But I mean that's not that big of a deal either. Just to have one component loose. But yeah, I think I agree. Bags are the safest way to go.
But yeah, so outside of that, I would say kind of with the storage, maybe going back, I guess, a little bit to if it comes with kind of a layout, I go back to thinking about, I think Tapestry has it and maybe some other Stonemaier games. I don't know if I've seen any other companies do it, but on the side of the box, they kind of have where things are supposed to
yep.
go. So if you are going to have a plastic insert or something, actually telling people, or whether it be on the side of the box or you've got a piece of paper kind of telling you where things go, I feel like that's necessary, especially for ones that are on the less detailed side. Just showing like, oh well, it'll fit this way if you do it.
Yeah, I really like that instead of having to figure out how to organize all of these different things, especially when it comes to very large boxes or possibly kind of collector's editions of games where it's just like, oh wait, how many layers, what order does this go? I do love it when they do have a guide, especially when it is printed on the side of the box and it's not like you have an extra sheet kind of flying around, which
And you got to put it on the top
Yeah.
or whatever. Yeah, I think that's a really nice touch. And then kind of with that going into it is the box size. Sometimes that's part of the reason why I end up taking the insert out is I try to put everything back in there and it's like, oh boy, with this insert it is a tight fit.
Yeah.
It barely fits on back in there because I'm like, I'm probably not putting it back in this insert in the perfect way. So yeah, I think box size can affect it a little bit as well too, what you want to do. Because if you have a not amazing insert and the box is already small, it gets to be really tough to try to fit everything in sometimes.
Yeah, there's a couple games for sure that are just like very tight. Clans of Caledonia, we bagged that. I don't think that came with an insert. If it did, it was removed like very early day one.
Yeah.
But that one's just always packed. And
Yeah, that's a thin box.
that is a thin box. The Garfield games as well have a lot of stuff
That's true.
in them. We do have expansions. I think Raiders is probably the tightest fit, but that does include one of the expansions. But that one actually is like, that's a chore to try to get that to be flush when you put that lid on. And I think that as well, there was in there the bin. I think we have some of the things binned, and it does make it a little harder because bags can be more flexible, and you kind of have to think about those things. Do you get like a big bag, or you can really spread the components out to where they're not so bulky and pushing up the lid of the box? It's just those things you have to think about. if the box isn't as big, but then at the same time, you don't want the box too big.
Exactly. It does work. If the box is too big, I think it does work to bag things, because then even if it's moving around, I don't know. There's the other option, and let us know in the comments below if you are this person. I don't know what percentage of people do this, but the no storage loose pieces. Oh boy, that just gives me anxiety thinking about it.
There's probably some games that could work.
It could work in some
Card games.
It's not many. Not many. Well, I shouldn't say not many. Not many of, like, I guess I prefer a lot of the Euro games that come with a ton of resources, ton of tiles.
Types, yeah.
It would be a huge mess.
I mean, over time, I feel like we've been okay with kind of mixing resources, like into like
that part
a
I'm fine
bin
with.
or type something where it's like you can tell them apart color-wise, so it's fine having them all together. So that's one step towards that chaos of having everything together. But yeah, just like even having the cards loose in there along with wooden components and tiles, that just seems wrong. So let us know if you do that or know anyone who does it.
Yes. And how do you
stay
live
away
with
from
yourself?
them?
We need to know if that's you. If you can live that way and you like it,
that's a lot easier.
Totally
that's
fine.
a lot easier.
It is the easiest thing to do. Scoop it right in there. That's the easiest way to do it.
Cards already come shuffled.
There you go. Once you get them all back together, you just better hope it's not like 5 different card types that are all the same size, because that's going to be a pain.
When you draw a card.
That's how you got to do it. But yeah, kind of, probably the last thing wrapping up, I would say, is looking at big boxes maybe of games, and this is something we'll probably discuss in a future one as well. Maybe a little bit more, talk about just big boxes in general. So if that sounds interesting to you, let us know in the comments below. I think that'll be one we'll probably talk about, but just kind of the storage with them. I feel like for a lot of those, they do have the inserts, and they have multiple layers sometimes.
Yes.
Which multiple layered inserts can be good, but are also a little bit like, oh boy.
Yeah.
But at the same time, me thinking about Everdell Complete Collection, or what was the other? Castles of Burgundy Deluxe Edition. Me thinking of, I'm going to remove the inserts, and I'm going to have everything loose in baggies.
No.
For some reason, that one, it seems weird.
You can't do that. Well, I mean, with Everdell, there's so many expansions.
That's true.
And with that one, there's so many expansions.
Well, you could just have huge bags.
That's true.
Here we got the...
If you had, I mean, that's probably the bag size we have the least of. It's just giant. That could work.
That's true. Oh, you want to play with this expansion? Wow. So
it could be good.
I think with them, even if they're not the best inserts, those are the ones I usually tend to leave.
Yeah, I mean,
I think
they're usually pretty good, and they separate things out pretty well. I think because the big box usually will include expansions and things like that, and I think if you do that, you have to separate them in a good way to where it's very clear, and you can just take one section out, and that's your base game, and leave the rest in there. Not take this out, like, okay, which of this is base game, which of this is not. It has to be separated, I think, because why even make it? Why include it if you're not going to make it user-friendly?
Yeah, I would say one disappointing thing sometimes with it is when you've got them layered, and something you need to play the game is on the bottom layer.
And maybe like put the box back,
really,
and then it's like,
we couldn't design it just a little bit better so that I wouldn't have to, so that like it'd be expansion content on the bottom or something. Like, oh, I got to dig for that expansion content. I can't remember if Castle of Burgundy has anything on the bottom one that isn't expansion. I think that's all expansion stuff. I do not remember off the top of my head, but I think Everdell does. And maybe I'm wrong here. I'm sorry, Everdell, if I am, but I believe that does have pieces that you need on the lowest layer. So that's just a little bit unfortunate. I don't know. But at the same time, like I said, I've never had to design one of these. I've definitely not had to design a multi-layered one, trying to get everything to fit inside the box.
Yeah.
Still keep things separate and have it make sense. So maybe that's just the best way that it worked. I don't know. They could have tried other things maybe, and it just didn't work that way. and this might just be the best way that it works. So
Yeah.
it's just the way it is, I guess.
I think they're usually pretty good though at actually holding the pieces in there.
Yeah.
I think when you do make some special edition, which I guess that's another thing as well. Do you go out and get custom inserts for games,
custom
like
inserts.
either folded space or I forget what the wood ones are called.
Is it Broken Token?
Broken Token, or
I think there's other ones too.
and game trays. That's
Game
the main
trays. Yeah, I think there's
one.
a
So
lot of different options.
There's a lot of different ones, and we have a few, and
Yeah.
I think I've had a good experience with all of those, and they've
Yeah.
all worked pretty good, and are usually
They're good.
noted kind of on the areas, kind of what they hold, which is a lot better than a lot of the basic no effort inserts that come in some of the games.
That's true.
So it's like, oh, this icon matches the back of this card, so those ones go there. It's very
That's true.
easy. I love it whenever it has that.
Yeah, that's true. We don't have all that many, but that is another good point. I think a lot of the times those custom ones probably end up being better than anything typically that comes in the game.
Yeah.
But there are definitely games that I don't think need that.
Yeah, that's true.
I know there's some people that probably like, oh, well, I'm getting that game, so I'm at the same time, if it has it, going to go order an insert from wherever.
Yeah.
You like folded space or whatever. If they have the option, I'm going to get that because just like mine sorted, and that's fine. But I think there are definitely games that probably don't need that.
Yeah.
But if it's something that it'll help set, I think that's one of the big things. One last big thing for me is if the insert helps setup.
Yeah.
Dwellings of Eldervale.
Dwellings of Eldervale is probably, I think, one of the best.
I would
mean,
agree.
It's just the player trays alone. I mean, well, that's the big thing. It's just you grab your player tray. What color do you want? I want blue.
It's like a custom baggie.
It is a custom baggie. It's a deluxeified custom baggie. Okay, sure, it may wear down the edges of the cardboard thing, but that is like totally worth it. I mean, you can find ways around that.
I think there's actually Etsy things out there that have like a plastic piece that you can put in there. But then I'm not sure what you do with the
then what
boards.
do you do with the boards? Then that's
because it all fits in there perfectly.
It does. Those trays, just having your resource little slots on the bottom, slots for all your meeples that have the custom shapes that all fit in there perfectly, slots for the tokens that you can gain throughout the game, and all your little meeple hats on the side. And you just close it up at the end of the game, put the player tray, your player board, which has all your reference and special abilities, you slot it on top of it, and now it's closed, and those pieces are staying in there and ready for setup next time. It's just one of the best, I think.
I would agree. I think, just overall, even the whole thing it all fits in there so well.
Yeah.
It makes sense how it goes in there.
Yes.
I think that one is a really good example of a great one. Yeah.
Which, I mean, it should be. It's very expensive.
That might be true.
But it doesn't try to be too perfect, too. Like, those are perfect, and that's where it needs to be perfect, to hold, like, those meeples.
Right.
But like, the
rest
monsters, it's like, the monsters can go into any slots. It's not like this one is for the yellow-winged monster. This one is for the whatever.
Now you just gave me the House of Horrors that is Destiny's.
Oh, yes, Destiny's is kind of custom.
A little bit custom, I think.
Is it custom for all the little ones, too?
I don't know.
It's like they're small enough that they kind of fit. But that one as well has been a disaster when I've opened the box before.
That has the plastic piece.
It has the lid.
It has, oh, God. Yeah, that one's been a disaster, too. That's...
Oh, Destiny's.
It's a good game, but sometimes I just like...
Yeah.
And then there's that dreaded moment where you go look at that box on your shelf and you see if you had it vertically, if you forgot, if somehow it got vertical, it does not put away horizontal, and you see that dreaded lid coming off, and
you try pushing it, and you try to turn it back horizontal, and it's not closing, and you lift it up, and everything is just up towards the corner, nearly falling out of the box. It's horrible. It's nightmare fuel.
It is nightmare fuel. Let us know what your nightmare fuel game is in the comments below. But otherwise, I think that's everything we got on this one. Check out our other Nacho Average Table Talks to comment on those as well. But otherwise, we hope to see you on those videos. And as always, don't forget to
Keep on nibbling.
on our content.